Okay, welcome to the Crow Discovery Project. This clip is going to include an yeah, I wish, an excerpt of an interview that I did recently on Truth Frequency Radio. But this clip is also about announcing that I'm going to be launching a podcast, and I want to talk a minute about why I'm going to launch that podcast. First of all, I should mention, I went to go buy the web address for my podcast, and someone has taken it upon them to buy Crrow777.com and then offer it up as a premium website for a few $100s. And so, while I don't appreciate that, my podcast will be located at Crrow777radio.com because, as previously mentioned, someone went and bought Crrow777.com for whatever reason. One of the main reasons I'm doing this is because it is getting increasingly difficult to talk about anything you want on YouTube. It is getting increasingly difficult to make videos without people in Pakistan or some country halfway across this world putting copyright strikes and other things coming from a place that you could never fight against if you wanted to. Recently, another channel was just shot down that was covering false flags and false news, and it was a legitimate channel. He was doing legitimate critiques, and they took him out. So this podcast site is going to allow me to do a few things. It's going to allow me to talk or post whatever the heck I want, because I will own everything. I will own the website, the media server that the media comes off, everything. The second thing is it will help me, it will allow me to be funded to continue to shoot as I have in the past. That's brought all the video that you see so far. But if I'm successful, it will allow me to pull my videos to my own media server, which makes them untouchable. No one can come along and just, put an arbitrary strike against me or claim this, that, or the other thing. They would actually have to go get a lawyer and do it through the typical way that copyright is enforced, not the way that Google does it, where someone files against you and the next thing you know, you've got a strike or your channel's gone or you're locked out or all the shenanigans that's been going on. At any rate, here's the excerpt of the interview. And I will do a few announcements. I'm still building the presence, the website that's going to house the podcast, but it will be coming, and those are the reasons I'm doing it. Oh, and I should mention, it will allow me, there's going to be a comments section on my website that will allow people who are truly interested in the work to have an adult conversation without all the shenanigans that goes on kind of on YouTube with all the haters and trolls and everything else that goes on. So there it is, and here we go. Cheers.
You know, Crow, there's actually a picture from Mars that looks eerily similar to a picture taken in Phoenix, Arizona, except tinted red. Do you know anything about this? And what can you tell our listeners about your theories regarding the similarities between Phoenix, Arizona, and apparently Mars?
Okay, so to cut to the chase, every image you've ever seen of Mars was shot here on Earth. To take this from a common sense kind of standpoint, consider this. We're going to go to a different world, we're going to take video, and we're going to give you the video back. Should you be able to take that video, put it in Photoshop, simply manipulate the RGB settings, and end up with an image that looks exactly like Earth? Should that be a possible thing you can do? Because that is what we can do with every single Mars image. It's basically just had its RGB skewed in a way where the red, that rusty red, comes up. But to top it off, I mean, people have short memories. There was a time when we were told the sky was always red in Mars, and then, lo and behold, an image came with a blue sky, and then we were told that actually Mars works the reverse of how Earth does. We get a red sunset, they get a blue sunrise and sunset. So, and that doesn't even address the memes that are put out there for whatever reason into the public consciousness. As an example of this, on The Big Bang Theory, the probably most popular TV show, the one guy who plays the astronaut in that makes an offhand joke that as he's operating the rover, that you're looking at images from a dirt road just outside Bakersfield. So I don't know if I went at that exactly as you asked, but there it is.
Oh, very well said. So that begs the question, though. what the heck is this place? I mean, we talk about what it's not. We talk about all the anomalies that we see. But in your opinion, and of course this is pure speculation, but what is this? Is this a ball floating around in space? Is this a hologram? Are we inside of a movie theater? What exactly is this?
I guess I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me. Are you asking me what is it that we see, or what is it that we're being shown?
A little bit of both. What is this world that we live in? What are we looking at up in the sky? Are we looking at a screen with a projection? Is there really an outer space out there? Are there really planets? We just can't get to them. What is your hypothesis?
So I think it's not even a hypothesis to say that all the images you've ever seen of Mars are fraud. I think you can demonstrate that with a simple Photoshop trick. But you're asking me what we see when we look up in the sky. A lot of people kind of come to me because I've been filming the sky for so many thousands of hours with really good equipment, and I am very careful not to replace one fantasy with another. So to answer your question, what we can know of what we are seeing is that we are looking at lights. That is what we can know. We cannot accept any data from NASA because they lie for a living. I have stated for a long time that NASA's mission is literally to ensure you know nothing about what's above the blue sky that you see. When you look up, you see lights. Now, when we take this back to the moon, that's what we're saying. We're saying that the moon is generating its own light. We started to talk about the quality of moonlight, but not to get off topic here. When you see a planet in the sky, when you see a star in the sky, you're looking at light. But there are some very smart people out there, artists, demonstrating that the quality of moonlight is not correct. It doesn't reflect the same colors that the sun does on a full moon. They're demonstrating this. It's not arguable. They're doing things like there's one gentleman who is an artist and a photographer who has shown that if you take a time lapse of the sky, if all these things we're looking at are so varied in distance from us, there's no way that when the perspective changes from our point of view that they can remain equidistant from each other, yet they do. The conclusion drawn there is that you're looking at a 2D plane. So while I cannot tell you exactly what we're looking at, because the last thing I want to do is say, guess what, you guys are believing in a fantasy, and then give Crrow's fantasy as the new thing to believe in. I really don't want to do that. So to just cut to the chase, what we can know of what we see above our head is that we're looking at lights.
I can't argue with that hypothesis at all. There have been many cultures and sects. Some worship the sun, some worship the moon, secret societies. How does that correlate to all of this?
Well, that's kind of a really involved question, because here in the West, everything we do is based on the sun. In other parts of the world, there's still lunar calendars and this kind of thing, but it's pretty clear at this point that a lot of people are pointing at the Masons as being responsible for a lot of the secret society stuff we see. What I would point out is the average Mason you ever see on the street doesn't know a darn thing. He goes home, he has a wife and family. It's absolutely at the upper echelons. But in my view, there is no difference between any of these secret societies, all the way back to the Greek Elysian mysteries, if there ever was such a thing. They are all encoding the same thing. It's the sun. Even the name of the Masons, the May Sun. It's all about the sun. It always has been about the sun. You can even look at the religion in the West. We have all these Christians who are reading a Bible that says, keep the Sabbath holy, and yet the Sabbath is Saturday. What the church has done is pulled that day to the day of the sun, Sun Day. So at the base of all these secret societies and the elite, or, people use the word Illuminati, which I never do, because, what are we talking about? Nobody knows what we're talking about. It's about the sun. It's encoded in everything. I even have a clip on my channel where I took time out to take the movie Michael, where John Travolta is an angel, and demonstrate that though the movie takes place, the plot of the movie takes place over about 3 days, encoded. The subtext in that movie is occurring over the course of a year, and Michael the Archangel is the sun moving through the signs of the zodiac, and I kind of break that down in the clip. This clip is not alone. This is done endlessly, ad nauseum, in Hollywood movies and TV and other places, where the main character is actually the sun or one of the characters, and they are traveling through the zodiac. If people go look at that clip on my channel, they'll have a better idea of what we're talking about. But to be short and concise, these secret societies are all pretty much based on the same thing in my view, and that kind of sets aside the whole dark, black magic-y kind of thing that's probably going on. But what they're encoding is the sun.
Wow. So where does the moon play into all of this?
You know, it's a funny thing because so much time on this planet by the people who run it is spent diminishing the feminine aspect, which hurts us all. It's particularly hard on women, and it's a freaking crime is what it is. But it hurts us all because this planet absolutely is desperate for the balancing power of the feminine aspect. And the moon is kind of the feminine aspect. And anyone can know things about the moon without going out to a telescope. Here's an example. If you would like to know something about the moon, do this. From now on, for the rest of your life, whenever you see the moon portrayed in an advertisement, in a movie, in a television show, pay very close attention to what is said just prior, during, and after the moon is shown, whether it's for 10 frames or 10 minutes. And then strip away the context, because words have meaning. In other words, if someone cracks an offhand joke just prior to the moon being shown, don't take it as a joke. Take those words that have a meaning and pay attention to what those words mean.
Very well said. Let's pick it up on the other side. Final segment of the hour with Crrow777, and we hit on a couple of different things before the break: the divine feminine, cinema symbolism, and oddly enough, we've had a regular guest, Robert Sullivan, 32nd degree Freemason, who has written books on cinema symbolism and has spoken about the exact same things that we're talking about tonight. And I do know a couple of Masons, and I would agree that most of them have no idea what's really going on. I actually was thinking about exploring that aspect and joining a lodge just so I can get into the library that they have, but I voted against it after speaking to a few other people because I don't even want anything to do with it. Some of the stories that I've heard from people that I really, really, really trust, they seem to pick certain people for these higher levels of understanding, and it comes with a very big element of control, which I'm completely and totally against. But Crow, you mentioned some of the symbolism in movies, especially when they show the moon. Are there any examples that you can point to specifically?
Right. Well, the movie Michael that I have a clip broken down really kind of shows the sun aspect of that. But what I was about to say, and I apologize for not paying attention to breaks better, what I was about to say as we went to break is if you pay attention to the moon in any given constructed form of media that comes to you and you pay attention to what's said before, during, and after, what you will quickly understand is that the undertone of what you're being presented with, the coded meme, is that the moon is associated with death. Your death, our death, all our deaths. It is also associated with sleep and lunacy, to be insane. These are the facts. So often in so many movies, I don't even need to give you an example. Anyone who goes out and pays attention will quickly see that in so many movies, hundreds of, probably thousands of them, when a death occurs, there will be a quick cut to the moon. It just goes on and on and on. And this is a good way to understand subtext and a coded meme that offers you information that is not readily offered to you in just an open verbal manner.
I'm going to have to keep my eyes peeled now on moon symbolism in cinema. I never really thought about that perspective. Now, I have seen Zeitgeist, of course, and the whole idea that the sun passes through the zodiac, that's a representation of Jesus Christ. He dies on the cross, is resurrected 3 days later, etc., etc. But you pointed it to the Archangel Michael. What do you think about the idea that the sun is a representation of the risen Savior that we've seen Horus and Jesus and so many others repeat it throughout history?
Well, I'm going to try to do this quick because I have a feeling we're coming to break. But the Vatican is at the key of this. The Vatican is wholly set up, and a lot of people will say Saturn, but ancillary to that, the Vatican is measuring and worshiping the sun all the time. It's what the obelisk and the sundial in the courtyard there is. But if you take, for example, there's a statue of St. Andrew, who is actually Hercules and represents the month of March in the Vatican. And he's got this kind of bizarre wooden cross behind him that looks like an X. It's actually not a cross at all. It's what's called a goniometer. And what it is two compasses that's come together, and what it's measuring is the angle of the ecliptic, or the path the sun travels, as it crosses the equator at the equinoxes. Okay? That's what that statue is representing, flat out. And ironically enough, the true first of the year should be in March. Julius Caesar and another pope changed it, so we have January. Ironically, St. Peter's brother, or St. Andrew's brother, is St. Peter, and he represents January. So you can see the coded game there playing, where the old first of the year, St. Andrew in March, or Hercules, is brother to St. Peter, who represents January, the current first of the year. But to get back to Andrew's goniometer, this double compass that is measuring the ecliptic, the path of the sun as it comes across the equator, that's what that cross is representing. What we find is we are told that Ptolemy did measurements on this way back in the day. Now, I can't tell you whether that history is accurate, but what we can look up and know is that in about the 1800s, the measurement was taken again and it had changed. And what they found is that gap is closing, that cross is closing roughly 1 minute per 100 years, which means in roughly 140,000 years, every day would be an equinox where night and day are equal. And these days when this occurs on Earth at the equinoxes, one of them refers to justice, and there's symbolism that the secret societies put behind all this. The reason I'm mentioning all this, and by the way, the cross I'm referring to is called the Saltire Cross. The reason I mention this is because it's clearly demonstrating that the secret societies were in the Vatican. The Vatican was responsible for much of what happened to the West, closely aligned with royalty all over the world, and apparently at one point in charge of a lot of the world on a kind of spiritual level above the rulers in certain ways. But what we see is the same encoding of the sun that goes on in our movies by the predominantly Jewish-run Hollywood is also to be found in the Vatican, which seemingly would have nothing to do with Jewishness, which is also exactly what the May suns are encoding. So, I mean, it's all really, kernels of the same nut in the same shell in a way.
Wow, I've never heard it tied together like this. I mean, that really, and the Masons especially, I've never thought about it from that perspective. So this has been extremely, extremely thought-provoking. Cherie, any questions?
I would actually like to have you back on soon to talk about the divine feminine aspect of this as well, because I think it's less about women than it is about the divine feminine within all of us, that balance that has to be achieved, or we're going to be constantly at war with each other and with our own selves. So it's one of the, it's among the largest issues that have faced this planet in this kind of male dominated society forever. And it is, in fact, exactly as you say, it not only has to do with women, but the removal of that feminine influence to each of us on an individual level, where even, any man that shows an effeminate quality is immediately made fun of, because that's not how men are supposed to be. And yet that very aspect that's being derided in that situation is the very thing that brings balance to this planet, a thing that we have not had in a long time.
It is. I would say that the divine feminine is the human empathy and being able to care for one another. And that's, you see feminism, which is a bastardization of feminine. And you see this neutral gender what's it called? The word slips on my metrosexual.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you can point to that and go, no, that's not right. But what they're really trying to get rid of is the human empathy and the caring for one another. And I think that's how we've wound up where we are right now. I mean, I've made this example before. We had 10,000 Mexican children coming over here, South American children, and people were sending them dirty underwear. And telling them to go crawl in a hole and die. I mean, these are babies. And this is the disconnection from human empathy. This is the divine feminine, in my opinion, that we need to bring back into our entire consciousness as a species. I can go on and on about that. Oh, go ahead.
The system that we find ourselves under is so perverted, and I'll use this example. There's a channel out there on YouTube that said that Bruce Jenner was a female something like 8 months to a year before he did the transformation. And he's not only saying Bruce Jenner, but he's pointing out they're actually saying Michelle Obama is a man. And while that's hard to even consider in an open-minded way on the face of it, when you see somebody call out someone like Bruce Jenner, and then you see not only the wordplay, Bruce gender, that's clearly been built into this, and you see just the kind of perverse circus that's being made out of a man becoming a woman who was an Olympian, among other things, and there's a whole, I could go on for days about what the Olympics is. Point is, it's really, the ruling class and the people in control are really doing what the average person would consider to be very perverse, dark things. For my part, you couldn't pay me to participate in these kinds of things.
Very well said. Crow, give us the websites one more time, please.
Okay, so it's basically my YouTube channel, Crrow777. If you even come close, I'm sure it'll get you there. And I will be launching a podcast in the next 2-3 months. That's really going to be the next big thing.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. This has been extremely thought-provoking. Ladies and gentlemen,